Welcome to Hair of the Werewolf. I'm Chase, and I'm here with my co-host Lily.
Hey, guys.
And we are a supernatural horror podcast that aims to tell scary stories and maybe have a drink or two, whatever we need to do to take care of whatever ails us from our hard weeks. So, cheers to all of you who are joining us tonight. Lily, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm dinking.
I'm dinking.
I'm dinking. I'm drinking Prost. It's my first beer, believe it or not, and it's a Kolsch.
Nice. I'm on root beer tonight. Delicious root beer. I'm a huge fan of root beer, but yeah, I'm on an antibiotic, so I gotta behave. So,
yeah, you really do. This is not the kind where you want to drink any alcohol on.
Yeah, so anyway, gotta be a little responsible, but that doesn't mean we still can't have fun. So before we get into the stories, few things. So there's another horror movie that we're gonna watch in a couple days, and I'm telling you about it because it's streaming on Amazon Prime for free. So for those of you that have Prime, maybe you'll be interested. It's called Halloween Party. It's a 2020 movie, and it's totally a teen scream, so it's not for everybody.
It's Halloween Party? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, so as far as I can tell, it's college students are haunted by mysterious happenings. The trailer suggests that an app brings people's worst fears to life, right?
Oh, wait, this sounds familiar.
And that their dorm previously was used for some sort of nefarious purpose. Don't know what specifically. Ooh. I'm assuming that's a big plot point.
Yeah.
It looks cheesy. It's totally a teen scream, but I'm excited to see. I mean, it's kind of like every time new technology exists, at some point there's some guy who's like, we have to make a horror movie about this. Like, There's No Black Christmas talked about how scary telephones can be, and they weren't new at the time, but yeah. I mean, still. And so there's movies about cars that are bad. So all of a sudden someone's like, ooh, apps. Everything's all about apps. But anyway, someone's like, there's an app that's haunted. I'm like, all right, well, they just don't understand how technology works.
They've already done, a ton of movies that are technology based. There was that one that I watched that was...
Isn't like Friend Request or Friend Zone or something?
Unfriended. And then Friend Request. I think there's like a few of them that are kind of more or less...
Well, those are social media. This one seemed to be like...
But it's like technology. It's like your computers and, whatever.
I find most of the concepts absolutely ridiculous and completely stupid, but that doesn't mean I don't have fun watching them. And I love me a good teen scream. So if you don't like teen screams, you might want to avoid this one like a plague. But if you're totally into watching something with a subpar plot just to watch some crazy slasher type horror, this might be up your alley. So we're going to watch that this week. If we get around to it, we'll talk about whether or not we liked it next week. No spoilers, obviously. Yeah, I've been in horror mode like constant. Mm-hmm. I just beat 2 horror video games while you were busy being responsible and researching for the podcast.
I know. It always takes me longer. I think I have a bad habit of taking a lot of breaks and then also not researching when I'm supposed to be researching.
We both have bad habits. You start early, but you take a million breaks, so it takes you forever to get research on. Me, I wait until the last minute, and then I do all my research like in one hardcore swoop.
I'm like I'm going to take a break. Okay, I think I can watch an hour of this episode. That's my break.
But, I mean, I have no idea which of you guys are guys and gals. Which one of you people out there are gamers at all. But so I just beat the original Resident Evil that came out in like 1996, I think, when we were all kids. And then I beat another game called Carrier, which came out in 2000. Both of them are like cheesy survival horror, zombies, and everything like that. You and me, we're going to play the brand new Resident Evil. Well, it's not brand new. It's a couple years old now. Resident Evil 7. I just bought it, so it's new to me.
Yeah, you told me you're going to not make me. It's not like you're forcing me or something. But yeah, you said you wanted to do that.
We were going to play it together, and we're going to record our thoughts during it. And if there's anything fun with that, I might put it on my YouTube channel, because I have a gaming YouTube channel. But if it sucks, then we're not going to do anything with it. Going to try it out.
We're going to ignore it even exists and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, as a heads up, we're not sure of the exact date. We will give an announcement when we know better on our social media, but we do have a game night, a game episode coming up soon.
Yay!
Pretty excited about that. I mean, I obviously got to finish my antibiotics
before
it happens.
Yeah, because you're like on a 10-day thing.
But I'm 2 days in.
Yeah, but you're not going to make it by next weekend.
Oh, absolutely not.
So
as long as the schedule permits, the following episode would be the earliest. But we'll let you guys know on social media, but just be excited for it, because if you guys want to drink along with us, that would be the episode to do it.
Yeah, we'll prepare you for sure. And then post the rules, I think maybe one more time
Oh,
or
we'll post them
whatever.
I think we should always have the rules posted every time we do a game night.
Okay, that's
you
probably
and
a good
me slowly
idea.
modify the rules, and we're like, this one doesn't ever come up, or we've got a new one. So we'll always have the rules on our Instagram as one of the images.
We can change the rules at any point, so that is our right.
Yes, it's a privilege.
It's a privilege.
But anyway, so I guess, do you have anything else to add before we jump into the stories?
No, I had no news whatsoever.
Well,
I'm pretty
quarantine
boring.
and all that. Quarantine's mostly
It's pretty
lifted
much
now,
for us here in New Mexico, or Albuquerque at the very least. It's definitely gotten a lot more lenient, and more friends and people are going out. So aside from
so we're being more social,
that,
which is great.
Yeah, we are being more social. I mean, obviously, you and I are vaccinated, so that helps.
And
yeah, I think it's good. So, but aside from that, no, I have no news.
All right. Well, without any further delays, then let's jump into your story.
Okay, so this story I have today, it's a little different.
So's mine later. This is great.
Yeah, so I actually had done some research on it like a long time ago and told you about it at the time, but not a whole lot. Like, I was just mentioning this place or whatever. And so when I started it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. It's got some weird like paranormal stuff going on. And then lo and behold, as I'm doing more research, I feel like I've kind of dipped into your realm a little bit.
No, you can't steal my stuff.
I didn't know. It was
why you gotta steal my stuff, bro?
But it's gonna be good. I really tried to do it justice because you're so good at the UFO stuff. I wouldn't say this is full-heartedly UFO focused because it does have other strange stuff going on that will veer into my section. But I think it's a good mix. But anyway.
So it does have UFO stuff?
I think so.
All right, well, then that means you need to start your story the way
No!
I start mine. You got to do it. You make me do it. It's your turn.
Wait, what is it again?
Well, now it's a beginning of episode instead of end of episode.
Oh, right.
So give it a shot.
So get ready for the beginning episode. Encounter.
Not bad. It's your first time, though.
I even, like, my hands were even doing a thing.
Oh, it was very animated. You guys can see how, like, much movement was in there.
I had to really prepare. I was really trying. Okay.
Maybe if I make her do it enough times, she's going to be like, Rob's right. We really need to get this as an audio clip that repeats.
I think you're right. So my story is located at La Zona de Silencio, the Zone of Silence, which is in Mexico. This place is also referred to as Mapimi Silent Zone because of its proximity to Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, which more specifically is in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, sweet. I know exactly where that is.
I'm really triangulating.
It's right next to the nothing.
So it's past nowhere, next to nothing.
Turn left at nothing and keep going until you see more
nothing. And then you're there.
Nothing.
It's perfect. No. It's actually overlapping 3 states, Durango, Chihuahua, and Coahuila.
See. Got all the big ones there. For those of you that don't know, nachos came from Coahuila. So...
Yeah, was it really?
Yeah, in Piedras Negras, on the border of the Rio Grande, on the eastern edge of Coahuila.
Oh, that's right. I'm starting to have flashbacks.
So I've never been there, but it's on my to-do list because it's like, gotta go.
Let's see. Where was I? Oh, yeah. The number one thing that people who visit these areas say occur to them is that they lose complete reception, hence the name. The silent zone. Like
cell phones and everything?
Yeah, so cell phones, radios, just anything that is electronic will completely die or be cut off. I wouldn't say, like, you run out of power or anything. But
this is not like the cars or anything.
Oh, right. No. So not necessarily that. Well, sometimes. There is a story that has kind of everything. But anyway, no, like in general, like if you're driving in that general area or if you go off-road, if you veer off into more central into the zone, it gets, like, more weird and yeah, so there's plenty of more to talk about that in a little bit. Other things might be like, for example, if it doesn't go silent, then you might hear like a weird chatter coming through or just some strange white noise that isn't quite normal. Like it feels like it's just getting a little haywire-y. Do you know what I mean? Like it
doesn't sound right.
Right, it just doesn't sound right. It's also recommended that if you go in this area that you don't lose sight of your car because people have claimed that when they get off track, they're kind of exploring or whatever, and they have a compass, the compass has in certain areas spun out of control or faced the wrong direction, making you believe that you're going north or, whatever you're supposed to be going to.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, rude. So here are some true events. Now, I know everything I say is true, right? But this one's like undisputably true. This is like recorded in history kind of moments. The first official recorded incident was in 1930s by Francisco Sarabia. He noted that his radio stopped functioning and his instruments went crazy. He thought he was going to do an emergency landing. That's how bad it was getting. But luckily, after a few moments, everything went back to normal. As soon as this did go back to normal, he reported the incident through the radio, and which was later, logged as to where it was that he was experiencing this. And it turned out that it was in the heart of the Zone of the Silence. And of course, to give credit, because you and I were talking about this last time about credible witnesses or reports about people and what they do.
Absolutely.
This guy was really credible. He's actually a pioneer of commercial aviation. He broke the record for speed when he flew from Mexico City to New York. So I think like he just was kind of reporting. He wasn't even mentioning that he was above this area. In fact, at that time, people didn't really know about it.
It's a long flight. He's obviously a professional, like a good pilot.
Yeah, he's focused. He's not like, oh, I'm above the zone of silence or anything like that.
He may not have even known what that was.
He didn't. In fact, I'm going to talk about that in a second. It didn't even occur to him because it wasn't even something that people were talking about at the time. So this is the next event. On February 8th, 1969, the Allende meteorite was seen entering the atmosphere at 1:05 a.m. It entered at incredible speed at 10 miles per second, and it illuminated the sky for hundreds of miles. Which,
that is fast.
Yeah, which, by the way, scientists estimated that the meteorite was, like, probably about the size of a car, which is massive. Right before it broke down. Obviously, it didn't land that way. The Allende meteorite is the largest and most studied meteorite in human history. It landed in the state of Chihuahua within the Zone of Silence. And it's the largest carbonaceous chondrite we have found on Earth and consists of calcium aluminum rich inclusions, which I know that was kind of a mouthful for me to say, but I had to mention it because that stuff is made of the oldest material formed in the solar system. So that's pretty cool. I mean, when I was reading about it, I'm like, I have to know a little bit more about it. So I actually watched 2 YouTube videos talking about these meteorites.
In between episodes of SVU.
In between episodes of SVU, when I was clearly doing my research. Scientists have been collecting as much of the meteorites they have for 25 years, actually. And they estimate that the total weight they have found so far is about 2 to 5 tons. I mean, that's a lot of discrepancy, but they really couldn't really say how much they have found. That's just like an estimation.
Absolutely.
And especially since, like, to this day, they're still finding fragments. This event was definitely one of the bigger events that occurred in the Zone of Silence that got people's attention thinking, like, what's going on here? You know what I mean?
Well, it's weird because it would have made sense if the stories all started after the meteor hit, but you got that one beforehand. So you're like, it was already weird, and then a meteor hits it, you're like, It just gets weirder from here, trust me. A year later, on July 11th, 1970, the U.S. Air Force launched Athena test missile from the Green River Launch Complex in Utah that was set to land at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Yay!
Shout out. However, the missile fell off course and landed in the Zone of Silence.
That's way off course.
That is super off course. And in the Zone of Silence, of all places. And so there hasn't been an explanation given by the military as to why this happened. And why this missile, like you said, are hundreds of miles past its destination. And so, of course, unsurprisingly, the U.S. military has been, or tried to be, as hush-hush about it as possible.
I mean, even if it was just a coincidence and it had no supernatural or paranormal thing going on, I mean, that's a really big mistake. You literally landed a missile in another country.
In another country. Yeah, they had to, like, go through all these things like, hey, other country, I'm sorry, but our fucking missile landed in this dead space that you guys are already like suspicious about. So can we go there and retrieve it? And that's actually exactly what they did.
No World War III, bro.
Yeah. JK. Yeah, so they did go recover the debris. A huge team was sent out. They actually definitely had to retrieve not just the debris because they made a big mess about it, but it did contain 2 small containers of cobalt-57, which is a radioactive element. It took the search team about a month to recover everything. Locals said that the Americans set up temporary labs, medical facilities, and places for people to sleep. So it was like a night and day thing. They were trying to get everything out as quickly as possible. But yeah, because of this is probably arguably the biggest event that occurred that got people's attention. I mean, I think the meteorite was probably a more spectacular situation, but this got people curious and a little weirded out and definitely stemmed a lot of conspiracies out of there. So thanks, military. There are some personal accounts I managed to find.
Nice.
Yeah, there's an article I read by T.E. Wilson that he wrote in 2016 where he goes and visits a man who lives nearby the Zone of Silence. His name is Benjamin Palacios. He grew up in a town nearby as well, so he's been there for a long time. And he owns his own UFO-themed ranch on the edge of the Zone of Silence. So during their trip, Palacio would occasionally veer off the road to certain spots to prove to Wilson that they will completely lose reception. So he's trying to make a point and show him a good time too. You know, he's writing an article about him. And lo and behold, Wilson was kind of shocked of how it worked because they would go to a certain area and all their devices would be no signal whatsoever.
Like all at once. Radios
too. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they were getting just local radio stations as well. And so he was kind of confused because sometimes, you and I have been to road trips before, and when we start losing radio signals, there's still some static. There's still something there.
You usually hear it slowly fade unless you go behind like a big mountain.
Yeah, it's like gradual. Well, there aren't any large obstruction within the zone. I think it's in a valley of other mountains, which I guess could be contributing to the signal loss.
But for all of them to stop at once is a little weird. Unless everything was coming from like a single tower in a single location, which doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I'm saying. And then Wilson, too, in this article he was writing, it just was weird. It felt weird. And when you step outside in these areas, they really do feel like you're really in silence as well. So it's kind of a physical and electronical thing.
Like maybe no birds or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
We had one of those moments when we went to Chaco Canyon, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That was cool.
That's in a valley. And when we went hiking there, it was eerily silent.
We definitely have to do I have to do a story about that, I think.
It's such a good. Again.
It's a really cool place. Oh, hell yeah, we'll go. So yes, Wilson was like, what the F? And that was kind of his experience. He didn't have anything else. Like, he didn't see anything. Here we go. Some people also believe that the signal disturbance is caused by subterranean deposits and magnetite and debris from meteorites that are still in the area. So they think it's like an accumulation of reasons versus one giant conspiracy. There have also been studies that show a higher level of magnetic energy that cannot be explained. This isn't actually very uncommon because there have been recordings of Earth's magnetic field does vary a few degrees in different parts of the surface.
Okay.
So this does just happen.
Yeah.
But there are arguments and people claim to say that it just happens to happen more at the Zone of Silence.
Well, we did have the previous thing when you told the story about how the compass goes crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty strong interference.
Exactly. So what's going on? The high magnetic fields have also been used to explain why a relatively high number of meteorites have fallen in the area. So they actually think that these things are being pulled in some sort of vortex.
That's a really strong force.
It's getting crazy.
Yeah, that one's... I'm going to file that under the probably not bub.
Exactly. Now, I mentioned the 1969 meteorite, the one that's really big. And then there was 2 other ones that happened not too long before. There was one in 1938 and another one in 1954, and those 2 meteorites crashed in the same spot. which is kind of weird. Right? That's weird, right?
That's really weird.
Okay. I don't know a lot about space debris.
So you should keep going. There's a lot I have to think about with that, and I have thoughts, but you just keep going.
Yeah, because don't they have like a somewhat of a trajectory, and they're being pulled. They could be pulled somewhat if they're passing like planets, I think, right? Like it could change, but that's if you're passing by. I don't know. Again, here we go. So I'm going to talk about like where the Zone of Silence name came from, like who discovered it or whatever. In 1960s, an engineer by the name of Harry Agosto de la Peña was hired by an oil company to explore the area. He quickly became aware that there were random areas that he would lose signal. So I'd say he might be one of the first that was really clocking this information.
Sure.
And but comparing it at the time.
Yeah.
So like while him and his team would be surveying and attempting to contact each other through radio or walkie-talkies, they'd find that they couldn't. And that was weird because they couldn't even get literally anything out of it.
And that wouldn't even have to do with radio towers being blocked by a mountain. This is a localized transmission.
Exactly. So now we're getting crazier. Aside from being frustrated, Peña was actually really, really fascinated about the whole thing. He even attempted to map out where the dead zones occurred, but he couldn't because I guess, according to him, it would change locations over a period of time. Isn't that... Okay, that's weird too, right?
It's very weird.
I feel like as I was reading this... Yeah, as I was reading this, I'm like, I'm not sure if this is normal in some areas or not, and I don't have time to research magnetic fields on Earth right now.
Right.
So it just sounds weird.
You're not giving me things that don't sound weird right now. I'm just kind of just accepting all of the weird.
And then, welcome to my world. I just have to accept that this is strange. Mm-hmm. Well, in 1975, there was an increased interest by the Historical Study Society of Chihuahua, who held seminars and conferences with the intent of developing a research program. They ended up sending 30 investigators, or researchers, which included biologists, geologists, and zoologists. They were able to conclude from Geiger counters and other types of reading that there was, in fact, a high concentration of radiation and other wavelengths. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know where the other scientists fit in, but I guess they tried to really investigate everything, just kind of get a good encompassed analysis of the environment. Sure. And that was one of the biggest discrepancies that they were finding. Continuing that same year, two engineers, Ray Cruz and Jorge Aguilar, who went out there to collect information regarding these strange wavelength patterns. So they were professionals in this area. This is a quote because like I said, I don't understand a lot of this, but here we go. Quote, "Their studies were focused on Hertzian waves and showed that the horizontal propagation of radio waves was normal, but the vertical was cut off completely, thus causing the phenomenon of silence. These scientists concluded that this anomaly was not a function of position, but of time." Tell me that makes sense to you.
Up until the end.
It got too smart for us.
I was like, wait, what?
I'm hoping someone out there isn't like, Lily, you're losing me. But a lot of this is kind of, has been studied, and it was hard for me to digest and kind of like understand it so I can tell it to you guys. This is as simple I was able to get it, if that makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, sorry. And even I'm still a little confused. But let's move on to more weird stuff. Aside from failed electronics, people say when they get there, in certain areas that would be considered dead zones, they have strange tingling sensations. I mentioned that before, didn't I?
Sounds, yeah, well, I mentioned it for Tom DeLonge in the other episode.
I was like, that sounds familiar. I was like, when did we say this before?
Yeah, he was near Area 51. He's like, yo, tingles, bro.
Yeah, so you can get the tingles here, too.
The Peter tingles.
The Peter tingles. Except instead of, like, cool radioactive spider, you're just getting radioactive.
You're probably getting, like, cancer slowly.
Yeah, exactly. So, not as cool. There have also been events where tourists have lost time. Not like they lost consciousness or ended up somewhere random. Like they would be out there for what they thought a couple of hours and then realize it was much, much longer or much, much shorter.
So maybe some people were having a really good time, and some people weren't having a good time.
Yeah.
This sucks. Can we go?
It's
We've been
all
here
relative.
Hours, bro.
The vegetation animals have been reported to have strange characteristics. Certain cacti have turned purple or a deep color red that would otherwise be green. And they've also had odd growth patterns.
I wonder what the tequila would taste like. From
Radioactive.
that agave.
Spicy.
Why does it taste all, like, muted?
Mutated.
Yeah.
Oh, gross. So tortoises have been also spotted to have odd triangular shaped shells. That one's a weird one.
That's really weird.
I'm like, poor radioactive tortoise. Reports of unnaturally large coyotes and lizards have been seen by many locals. I'm like skinwalkers, but whatever. There have been reports from locals and tourists of encountering tall, white, blonde people when they're in the middle of nowhere. That one made me laugh.
It could totally be tourists, don't you think?
I mean, you would think, but maybe not, because they say that oftentimes whenever these reports have been like reported or whatever, it's usually 2 men and 1 woman, and they're always dressed really weird. Either it's inappropriate for being out in the desert, like just does not fit into why you would wear something like that, or the styles of clothing are extreme.
I don't know why, I'm just picturing like guys wearing like, you know, like mascot outfits for like baseball games. And just walking up like, that's really inappropriate for out here, bro.
I think I just pictured like someone wearing a fur coat and you're like, you're in a desert, like what are you doing? And like heels. That's what I'm picturing, and I think that's maybe what they're referring to.
I just wish they were more specific, because I'm like, are they wearing too little? Are they wearing too much? Is it just weird? I mean, are they wearing like gas station employee outfits or something?
Yeah,
or?
so they just said like there's something off about them too. So
Okay.
I think it's this whole situation that really bothers them. They always speak perfect Spanish.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I guess that's nice. And for whatever reason, they're always asking for water. There is a story, or rather a personal experience, where there's a ranch in the nearby area who encountered these people a few times. He says that they seemed always really nice and sometimes charismatic, like they were just very kind of pleasant to have around in theory, but even he said it was just weird. Yeah, there was something weird. And they always asked for water, so that was consistent as well. One day, there was a guy who also worked on the ranch that saw them just appear kind of out of nowhere. He was kind of working, and then he turns around and they're walking his way. And he's like, oh, where did you come from? And the answer they gave him, from above.
All right, so like when you said people were showing up, I was thinking like, oh, people go hiking through the Zona de Silencio, they just run into some tall blonde people. I'm like, yeah, they're just running into other people, but these guys, these strange people are showing up on like ranches nearby regularly,
asking for water and just hanging out.
That's
for
weird.
Moments. Yeah.
From above, huh?
Yeah. So the guy goes on and says that he didn't know what else to say and just gave him their water and watched them walk away. Like he's like, I'm done talking to you.
So, are you thinking that it's either aliens who think that like tall bleach blonde hair is like the pinnacle, or are they like from the future and we just know that tall blonde is back in fashion at some point in the future?
Yeah, they're like, this is what we all look like.
The Valley Girl.
The Valley Girl look. The surfer and Valley Girl.
I like, totally have some water. I'm like hella parched.
Oh man, you're making this really scary.
But I have to do it in Espanol.
In Espanol. Oh yeah, how would you do it, Chase?
I don't know what Valley Girl sounds like in Espanol, but I can tell you right now, that's something I really want to know.
Maybe we can Google it later.
We just need to watch a Spanish dub of Clueless.
That never occurred to me. We need to
totally do it.
It's gonna be so lame. Okay. Let's see here. Where was I? Oh yes. There is a very specific event. On October 13th, 1975, Ernesto and Josefina Diaz went out to the Zone of Silence to collect rocks and fossils because it's kind of a very fascinating area geologically speaking. So that's just where a lot of people go if they're studying that too. I mean, it's not just because they're into the weird or whatever. There is some cool scientific stuff out there. Anyway, after spending hours out there, they didn't realize that there was a big storm coming in, and they were completely caught off guard. So they quickly collected their things, got in their car, and sped towards the main road. But unfortunately, they weren't fast enough and found themselves stuck in the mud. After a few moments, the couple saw 2 figures approaching their vehicle. The couple described them as being tall, white men who wore matching yellow raincoats and matching hats.
So that is weird.
Yeah.
Now I have a story where I'm like, all right.
This is a more, specific situation. Not knowing what else to do, Ernesto and Josefina spoke to the 2 men after they got close enough, and they actually told the couple to stay in the car while they worked on them getting out. So they were going to help them, but didn't want their help.
Weird.
Yeah, so very weird. Only after a few seconds later, the car became unstuck, and Ernesto got out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he kind of got unstuck, drove a little ways, paused because he wanted to say thank you, but he couldn't see them anywhere. Like, they were gone.
Interesting.
So he's like, what the hell? It's still raining, so he's like, well, I gotta get out of here. So he does. They both make it out. Everything's fine, but the whole experience was to them just weird.
These tall white guy sightings are actually getting really creepy to me.
It's
not weird, it's creepy.
It's super creepy. What are they doing out there? So this is a wild theory. I might be able to tell you what they're doing out there, but I couldn't come up with a better explanation because I couldn't find one. These are 2 of the big ones that people think.
And is this when you trespass into my territory?
A little bit.
Okay.
So, in UFO lore, these beings are often referred to as the Nordics.
Oh, I know all about the Nordics.
You do not, really?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have not talked about that yet.
Yes, allegedly the first real occurrence with them was in like the late 40s, early 50s with the president at an airfield. Yes, and there's like 3 races that are talked to regularly. The Nordics are supposed to be... I never pictured them having hair, though. When every description I said they were supposed to be tall and pale with blue eyes, but they're the Nordics.
Yeah, oftentimes they do have blue eyes, or I think every time.
And human, very human.
Yeah, just really tall is all, and slender. But I was able to condense that information for you, or for everyone else. So like I said, they are referred to as the Nordics, and they are a product of enlightened beings that had once been abducted by aliens, then returned to significant areas of Earth. I don't know why. I didn't look into it, but that seems kind of wild already. So here's theory number 2. This is my favorite one. There's a Mexican paranormal research group called El Centro de Investigación de Antropología Cósmica de la Escuela Filosofía, LEMEN.
Man, is it really awesome that I actually knew exactly what all those words meant? Yes.
Translation, the Research Center of Cosmic Anthropology of the LEMEN School of Philosophy. They believe that the Nordics, quote unquote, might actually be part of a lost civilization called Tulum Balam, who inhabited the area below Mapimi Biosphere Reserve. So it's underneath it. They are actually called the Yellow Mayan people. And, sorry. And the mountains that surround the reserve are actual ancient ruins that were once pyramids, not actually mountains. And they're just chilling out there still.
Well, I mean, it sounds like they have a whole lot of evidence for this.
Yes, they have.
There's no way this is just wild conjecture.
No. This is from a school of philosophy, and so I think it could be true.
You can put the word school in anything if you want to. It doesn't make it smart.
Or research center. What was it called again? I don't know. Anyway,
I think it was like the research of anthropology and philosophy and space.
Yes, those are the theories as to what these white people are doing in Mexico. Who knows what they are? So
just as a heads up for anyone out there listening, and for you, Lily, since you've now dabbled into the Nordics, I will make an effort to do a story on Nordics for you.
That's as far as I got. I read a little bit. I'm like, I got to mention it because this is a common occurrence that, for whatever reason, happens at the Zone of Silence, and I felt like I needed to provide that information.
Well, I did not think that they were going to go dabbling into so the Nordic thing is kind of one of those recurring conspiracy theories things, kind of like Men in Black and
the Black
children. There's those children,
black-eyed kids.
Yeah, except I actually put a lot more credit into things like the Men in Black, whereas this one seems really crazy sci-fi. But I'll do a story on it for you. So
Hey, there are real people out there who've seen them. And
I believe they're seeing people.
Yeah.
Just wondering if there's just like a crazy tour bus.
Just like some
like Oslo.
It's just like a nerdy anthropology team who are like out there like, we really need water. We should keep.
Why do we keep running out of water?
Oh my god, those poor guys. Okay.
Damn it, Sven.
They're like, they're wearing really weird clothes. I've had this for 10 years. It's out of style.
It says stuntman on it. It's cool.
Stuntman. Oh my god.
But their Spanish is good. That's the weird part.
Yeah, well, they're nerds, so they're just going to really try.
Yeah, they studied like super formal academic Spanish.
Exactly. It's like, it's perfect Spanish.
I'm liking this theory that it's like nerdy tourist anthropologists who just don't know how to live in a desert.
Yeah.
This is great.
That are from like Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Anyway. So here is a very popular and just like one of the bigger personal stories that I've come across multiple times when I'm reading about this area. This story is of Hector Alvarez. Alvarez worked at graveyard shifts as a researcher at the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve back in 2013. Typically, Alvarez would provide reports on a regular basis to his superiors, basically just logging in the stuff he did that day and just to make sure that everything was normal. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Not long after, however, Alvarez started reporting strange lights that he would see in the sky during his shifts. Initially, he tried to provide evidence because, when you have these reports, you're supposed to give, some sort of data. It's like, oh, well, where did this occur? Usually it's science-y kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
The information would have been there. So when he started seeing these lights and put them in the reports without evidence, his superiors were like, don't do that.
Stop wasting your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Unless you have a picture or a video. But he tried. Alvarez said that he would try taking photos or video, but the equipment would always fail. I mean, that would make sense because here we are in this zone of silence that seems to be the thing. But because he was still determined, although maybe not provide that information to his superiors, he did keep a personal journal and recorded everything that he encountered. And here are some of the strange findings that he had. There were what he thought strange wind and atmospheric pressure patterns that were recorded by the station's weather center. These readings would indicate extreme weather, like crazy winds or heavy thunderstorms. But when he would go outside or drive to the areas that these, weather changes were occurring, sure. They weren't. It was actually very still, just a normal night. So he had no idea how to approach this because whenever he'd go out there, he also was experiencing the same kind of dead reception space as well. So who knows? Could be related. He would also say that he started seeing weird triangular shapes at night floating in the air. He would say that the outline of the triangle contained a fiery red quality, and inside were bands of shifting colors. He claimed that he couldn't determine the size of the object because he couldn't tell how far away they were. So it looked very weird, One night while he was in the lab, all the computer speakers turned on at the same time and transmitted a jumbled white noise for a few moments when all of a sudden they just shut off. Alvarez was not able to turn on the computers back on, so he obviously reported it. That he did put in the report, and that stayed true. And the following day, a technician came out to investigate and try to fix the computers, and he discovered that the hard drives and motherboards were melted.
Wow.
So it was like a
power
surge of electricity, but it didn't melt the whole computer.
Well, but to melt that stuff, man, there's a lot of safety features that we build into our devices.
You would think, especially a facility,
they would have all had to have failed, so that's weird. If they actually had melted, something really bizarre happened.
Exactly, and I think that's
maybe Hector just threw Molotov cocktails in them, and he's just they'll show them for not believing me.
I think that would burn the facility, not just the motherboards.
Oh no, if it's inside a computer, it'll just melt everything in there and burn away.
Yeah, maybe he got really upset.
But then there'd be a lot of broken glass.
You don't know how to destroy a computer, do you?
It's not a perfect theory. It's got some holes.
It's got a little bit of, loopholes here. No. So on March 15th, 2013, it was reported that Alvarez had inexplicably left his post that night and was never seen again. he left behind his journal and his car, which was still parked at the research center.
Whoa. So he's still gone?
He's still gone.
Did you see this on Unsolved Mysteries or something?
No, this one I read, and this one was like a really popular story that I read in multiple articles. I wouldn't say I found it on a show or anything. I didn't see that come across.
Man, I hope he's okay.
Yeah, who knows? It's like the cartels.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a sad reality to think that is a very possible.
I mean,
thing
if he's
happen.
out there, but like, what would he have come across that they would have cared? I don't know.
Them burying a body in the Zona de Silence.
Yeah, but
They don't really bury bodies, do they? They don't really care. They kind of just throw them out there.
oh no, they have like giant body pits that they have where they dump.
I just see all the stories where they like hang beheaded people off of like highway overpasses. And
But I
like,
think those are just to prove a point. I think if it's like, you know, let's say you were trafficking a bunch of women and then you didn't want them anymore.
wow, that got morbid.
These are true stories.
No, you're right. That's sad stuff. We're not a true crime podcast. We must stay away.
Sorry, I didn't mean to depress. Sorry, I dipped into true crime again. Sorry about that.
Poor Hector.
But those are like the more popular stories. Like I said, the biggest one is losing reception and just having weird anomalies. Seeing lights in the sky is very common as well. Just overall uneasiness and creepiness.
So if we ever end up on that road trip through Mexico, I know where I want to stop. The only problem is, I think if we go, what I want to do, I'm not tall, but I could put on a wig. And I want to walk up to some local and just
You're
be
gonna
like,
get shot.
do you guys have any water? They'd be like, yeah, so most of the time it's usually these tall, blonde, blue-eyed guys, but then this like fat, short guy with no crappy wig asked for water. I don't know if it's related or not.
But I gave him water. And nachos, he asked.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Americans. His Spanish was also not immaculate. It was pretty awful.
Actually, he was just speaking English, so. Oh my god. Yeah, so you would be the worst Nordic, for sure.
But I'm still totally willing to go.
I'm willing to go. I think it'd be pretty cool to see just all that stuff. I mean, it is kind of just a vast desert. There isn't a whole lot of visual stimulation, to be honest, but I think there is tour guides that are provided. Like I said, there was that one guy who has his museum, but I believe, I don't know if he still is now, especially with the whole pandemic thing that might have been put on hold, but there were people that would take groups out there and stay over the night, do some research, sightseeing, you know, watching the stars, telling stories. So it kind of does provide some sort of entertainment and all that good stuff. So who knows? Maybe we can do something like that one day.
Sounds like my cup of tea. We're from the Southwest. Big, wide open deserts we know that. We're good with that.
We're okay with that. Rehydrate.
We won't be asking no one for water.
No, it's only beer for us and death, apparently.
Do you guys need water? No, I got my 12-pack right here.
I ain't no Nordic.
And if I get real thirsty, I got me my gin.
It's clear.
That's for emergency hydration only.
Yeah, get it together. Oh my god. So I hope you liked it. I'm sorry I dipped into your world there. But
No, I'm cool with it. That's awesome. I loved it. I want to go.
Yay.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
What do you think was the scariest thing for you?
The regularity of occurrences of tall, blonde, strange people walking up asking for water. Like, if they just saw the people, that's one thing. But the fact that they're always asking for water.
They're asking for water, and from what I understand, they're very interactive, too. So.
Yeah, I think the other thing that really weirded me out was multiple meteor impacts.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about that, and some of my ideas are, you know how we can predict certain meteor showers that happen every year because we know the Earth is going to be passing through an area with a lot of meteor activity. So, you know, what if we're constantly passing through an area with large meteorites, and so the chances of them coming in kind of make, like, in the same area kind of makes sense, except the Earth is also rotating. And so that's why usually every year when you want to see, like, one of the meteor showers, you have to, they give you predictions for what days and what states you can see them the best, because it kind of changes, because depending on how the Earth is rotated as it passes through the field, you see it in
like either
areas.
It's in the day and you're not going to see it or whatever. Yeah.
So for multiple massive meteors to be hitting in such a small area every time, that's weird.
I mean, in the grand scheme of the planet, it is, because space is, I think it's hard to calculate. I've seen different numbers, but I just estimated about 1,500 square miles is this area. So I mean,
it's big, but it's not that big.
Exactly, it's big, but it's not like the biggest area or anything.
I don't have any data, but it would be something I'd look into, saying, do we see a lot of meteor impacts along this like latitude? So maybe if you see them all around that area, then maybe I'm like, oh, it's just a lot of them are going to occur there, but they happen all around that latitude. But I was thinking that if you...
There have been arguments, like the skeptics say, well, meteors land everywhere. But I think what they were trying to say here is that two actually land in the same spot. And
a lot of weird stuff's already happening.
And so I think it's just an accumulation of what the fuck kind of thing. So I think it's weird. I think it's definitely something that if not a lot of the stories I told you are actually recorded true events, like the missile. Also, just completely...
I'd already forgotten about the stupid missile.
That's what the U.S. military wants you to do. Don't forget.
It's like when you're shooting a Nerf gun and 3 of the bullets all go in the right place, but then the 4th one just shoots a meter off to the side. You're like, how did that...
It goes out the window and you're like, okay, what happened here?
And we're so lazy, we're like, we've lost that arrow. Not going to get that.
No, actually, this was a pretty large missile, so they definitely had to... retrieve that material because it's just out there now. I don't know. I when I was reading a lot of these, I felt like a lot of it obviously is true, and there were a lot more personal accounts than I anticipated than just your generic a lot of people experience this or that. I mean, there were events that people report and say, hey, this just happened to me or whatever.
I would say that although I maybe don't give much credit to the theories, I'd say almost everything you told me happened, I believe happened almost exactly like they said it. Maybe the blonde guys saying they came from above, that story might not have happened.
He might have misunderstood or who knows, embellished.
Yeah, but for the most part, they all sound like weird things.
Or maybe he was just trolling them. He's like, what do you think I came from? Or you know what I mean? Saying, I'm from above. What do you think?
Maybe that was super racist. He's like, I'm above you. Maybe they were just assholes who wanted water.
Maybe they meant north. I actually am from the north. Who knows?
And they are literal Nordics.
Yeah. It's all coming together.
There's a lot to digest here. On that note, let's take a quick break, come back, and because I got a story, and don't worry, you ventured into my alien stuff this month, and my story has nothing to do, mostly nothing to do with aliens. So if people were looking for something not alien related, don't worry, it's coming.
Woo!
So all right, we'll take a quick break, and we'll see you guys in a few. All right, we're back, guys, and I got a story for you, and it's not an end of episode encounter. Nope. Today we have a tropical terror. Looking at you, Vivi, because you told me that you liked these more, so I figured I'd do a few.
Nice.
So anyway, today I want to talk about Chris Columbus.
Chris Columbus?
Christopher Columbus.
Sorry, not a lot of people refer to him as Chris.
I can
so
only
casual.
I know, right? So I'm just assuming that most of you, when I say that name, are thinking about the acclaimed director of the Home Alone movies, Mrs. Doubtfire, Adventures in Babysitting, the first 2 Harry Potter movies. No, I'm not talking about that Chris Columbus.
Of course not. I mean, I thought for a second, but no.
I'm going to talk about the much lesser known one, the Italian explorer who sailed for the Spanish crown.
Sure.
The one who allegedly discovered America. He didn't discover anything, but history likes to tell elementary school students that he discovered America.
For sure.
Anyway, at the very least, he did bring everyone knows, he did bring the first European contact to Central, South America, all that stuff.
Oh, I thought you were going to say plagues.
Well, I mean, that's one of the kinds of contact he brought, I guess.
He really brought it, for sure.
Yeah. So I normally wouldn't talk about such a prolific historic moment on our supernatural horror podcast show. Mm-hmm. But I think this one's interesting because there's a little piece of history that I had never heard before until I read about this, and just kind of shows that usually history, there's so much going on in history, we have to cherry pick the information just to make it easy to digest. It's not because we're trying to avoid stuff, it's just, is it that important?
Right. So
for our podcast, this is important because you see, something weird happened on the famous 1492 voyage. An article from 1990 written by a J. Marvel, I assume it's pronounced Marvel like the comics instead of like Marvel or something, but he delved deep, and I assume it's a guy too, so I apologize, maybe it's a girl, so we'll just say they. J. Marvel delved deep into this bizarre event. Mm-hmm. It looked at multiple historical documents from the 16th century, including multiple histories of the discovery. In particular, he analyzed the history of Don Fernando, who was Columbus's second son, and even court documents from the lawsuit between Columbus's heirs and the Crown of Spain. All of them seem to mention something interesting, but the science and calculations of modern times make this event far more interesting than any of the paperwork said at the time. This occurred on October 11th, 1492, the night before their famous landfall in the New World. Mm-hmm. At around midnight, several of the crew, Columbus included, saw a light in the distance.
Ooh.
The accounts of all the crew who saw it are as similar to each other as they are different. Some describe it as a flickering, like a candle, with flashes and changes in intensity. Yet they also mentioned the light would disappear for periods of time, and then come back. But the most interesting thing several crew noticed was that the light appeared to ascend upwards.
Oh, geez.
Now, one account mentioned very specifically that it only ascended, but another account mentioned that it ascended and descended again and again.
Oh, okay.
They all agree, though, that the light was intermittent, and eventually it was gone. It did not stay. And this was around like midnight-ish, if I didn't say that already.
Okay.
One of the reasons the light was so well documented was that sailors at the time were often rewarded if they were the first to spot land. Seeing light is often a strong and powerful indicator that land is near, even at night. Mm-hmm. This is why so many documents included stories and quotes from crewmates and their direct family about this event. People wanted the money. You know,
oh, so like a good reward, not like, oh, good job. Or...
Yeah, Columbus, this is what some of the lawsuits are about. He was granted money every year for the rest of his life for finding land.
Holy cow. Okay.
This is good money. People wanted this. There was a huge reward.
Now I see the drive into, quote unquote, discovering stuff.
Exactly. Oh, it's always about money and titles.
Yeah.
Columbus was not a famous person. I think he was, I think he lived at a church and he was practicing in the church, and he wanted money and fame, and I think he was an amateur cartographer. I don't know too much.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to remember all the stuff I learned in college, and that was way too long ago. Anyway, now it seems obvious that since they actually did make landfall the next day, that they had spotted something on land and they saw a light. You're like, yeah, that's probably what they saw. The problem is that modern researchers debate what actually did happen because things get rather odd when they start to do the math. See, had they truly believed they found and spotted land, they would have changed course and moved towards it. But they didn't do that. They didn't change course at all. They didn't change course until the day when they spotted land. And they were moving the whole time, by the way. Right. Speed. So since they weren't heading towards the light, they spotted the light off to the side. And they even said in some of the documents I looked at, the translations in English, they said that's probably land. But they didn't turn to it. One of the diarios, which I assume is diary in Spanish, right?
Diarios?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diarios that was researched in this paper referred to it as a, quote, so occluded a thing, unquote, that it didn't warrant enough evidence of land and that they wouldn't change course. So that means that even they saw it and suggested they might have seen land. They weren't even sure because it seemed so bizarre and weird.
I think they were... if it's as, like, strange as what it sounds like to me, it's something they've probably never seen before. And who knows? Maybe they were like, it could be a trick. They probably were very superstitious at the time as well. And for all I know, they're like, that's probably just a bad omen and
exactly. Whatnot. And a lot of people are saying, well, if they thought it was land, I don't think they did think it was land. I think all the court documents and all the diaries and histories of it later, people saying land is because they were so desperate for getting a reward for land because they did actually find landfall the next day that it's so easy to say, yeah, I spotted the land.
But it was me who did that.
Yeah, when they probably all saw a light and they're like, the fuck? So Credible research done by the Geographical Journal dated May 1927 calculated that the three ships were still at least 38 nautical miles from land when this mysterious light was witnessed, judging by when they made landfall. I mean, the boats just didn't stop moving or anything. That's quite the distance to spot a light.
Okay.
38 nautical miles is really far away.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what a nautical mile is.
It's close to a normal mile.
Oh, damn it!
I don't remember the specific. I think it's slightly more. Hold
okay.
on. That's actually a really good question.
Well, then why not call it a mile? Or is it just to say that it's in the sea?
I think there is a difference, though.
Oh.
So let me just look this up real quick to make sure, because we should know this. Okay, so a nautical mile is just over a normal mile. It looks like, according to the internet, at 1.151 miles.
Okay, so that's super minute. I mean...
Yeah, 1,852 meters. But anyway, so that's pretty far.
Okay.
Yeah, and these calculations were made based on the reported speed of the boats, the weather of the boats, everything that was written about in the logs that Columbus and everything were keeping at the time. So they're like, we can make a pretty good prediction of how long it took them to actually reach the land and everything like that.
Okay.
So before we keep going on, another thing that makes this a very interesting story is, and this is something we don't tell kids, we don't actually know where Columbus landed. Mm-hmm. We have predictions, we have ideas, but we don't know because he didn't leave traces and land masses there, because after he landed there, he sailed on to other islands.
Yeah.
What we do know for sure is it was an island in the Bahamas area, and that the island was described as being bean-shaped. There are drawings that were taken. There was water within the island, too, and it wasn't that big of an island. We also know that the locals called the island Guanahani.
Okay.
But Columbus, being, the machismo guy he is, renames it when he lands, even though there's people already there that named it. He named it San Salvador.
Yeah.
Well, we had lost all record of specifically where this island was. I mean, navigation that they wrote down weren't very accurate at the time. So we have predictions, and one of the biggest predictions is that there's this island called Wattlings Island, which is where a lot of people think he landed. Wattlings Island changed their name in 1925 to San Salvador, I'm assuming, because they're like, yay.
Okay.
Now, there are some academics who debate this, and they have other islands in the area they think, but a lot of people assume this is the island that he landed on.
Okay.
This is pretty interesting, though, because we need to look at this island when we're doing the calculations on where the boats were, and they saw the lights. What could they have seen? Just to find out.
Okay.
So what are the explanations for this mysterious light that these people saw? So one of the obvious ones is, fires on the island, which is what most people were originally assuming they saw. That's how you see people on land. So was it fires on the beach or near the shore? Well, the curvature of the Earth, it makes this problematic, because the curvature of the Earth is about 8 inches per mile, which means over 38 nautical miles. That means over 25 feet of elevation would be obstructed. So you couldn't see the beach. You could only see 25 feet above the beach.
Yeah.
And so that means you wouldn't see fires on the beach.
Unless there was a tall palm tree or something, but that wouldn't even...
And there aren't on this island.
Oh, okay. Well...
unless its vegetation has changed that much. And it might have. All the pictures I've seen of it, it's not this super tropical, dense. It's not a forest or anything
okay,
like that.
Sure. I don't know.
So you wouldn't see things directly on the shore or on the beach. Maybe things further inland, because, islands, elevation does go up. At least, 25 feet's not an unreasonable amount to assume for that. In 1959, Ruth Durlacher Wolper published findings through the Smithsonian Institute about a study she did. She exhaustively calculated exact moon positioning and weather to try to simulate the exact scenario detailed in the historical record. She went out on the night off the shore of Wattlings Island, and she had people start fires on High K, which is, if I'm not mistaken for what I researched, the highest point on the island.
Oh, okay.
Which is at 114 feet. She did indeed spot a fire, noting that the mist of salt spray may have made the light reflect in such a way to make it more visible to her at this distance. But one problem is she was only 29 nautical miles away, not 38, which is 9 miles closer, which is not an insignificant distance when you're talking about seeing a fire. I mean, 9 miles is a long ways to spot a fire.
Oh, yeah,
And
totally.
that's 9 miles closer she was than her. So this is already a big problem. That's a 6-foot elevation difference. So instead of it having to be 25 feet, it could only be 19 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So another issue was that the nature of this light was different. It was not intermittent. It did not disappear and come back. And it did not give any indication of rising or falling, which I would assume would have been like an artifact of this sea mist she talked about, reflecting like she should have seen something that said, yes, this is what the fire would look like at this distance and this perfect moonlight in this perfect time. But it didn't do anything like that. Without having access to the article myself, I'm reading this guy's paper where he read and dissected the article. It is also hard to determine if the fire she had created was a massive bonfire just to ensure that she could see it, or if it was much smaller fires like a torch that would have been more reasonable to expect the natives to have had at the time. Like, why would natives have a giant bonfire going at midnight? It doesn't make much sense. Like, maybe we
do
one.
when we're drunk.
Oh, yeah, that's possible. But I think the idea is to assume that maybe one of them was walking around with a torch, sure, but a giant bonfire, it changes how well you can see something from a distance. So I didn't know if they just had a normal fire that we were like, this is probably the kind of fire
maybe
that
they were setting off like fire lanterns.
See, these are really good possibilities.
I don't know when that came into human history, to be honest. But
I mean, I don't have any information on the culture of the people who lived there at the time.
Yeah.
What kind of fires they would have, where they would have fires. Would they be up at midnight? Who knows? So, furthermore, when she conducted the experiment, there was a lighthouse on the island. Despite this, she didn't spot the lighthouse until much later at night when she was further north in the water. The lighthouse is rated at 400,000 candle power.
Okay.
That's how it was, that when it was put up. This is before they were doing lumens and stuff like that.
Okay, sure.
And had a height of 170 feet. That's way higher than the fire she had and way, way brighter.
Yeah.
And she still couldn't see it for so long during her journey, which says something. Because, you know, something that bright and that high up she couldn't see, but then she could see this fire. There's a lot of confusing things about her trying to recreate the scenario that makes it bizarre. So that's one explanation that seems problematic. Another is...
Why? Is it because she couldn't see it?
Right? And here's another posed explanation. In 1829, historian D. Martin Fernandez de Navarrete suggested that it may have been a mistake. He noted that the Santa Maria of the three ships, you know, the Nina Pinta Santa Maria, the Santa Maria was the big ship, was way further behind the two smaller ships. Like, it was lagging ass.
Oh, okay.
And he suggested that they may have seen light from one of those distant ships and that it wasn't from an island at the time. But I don't think he had all the access to the research and articles that we can get much more easily now. That's pretty much bull, because there is written documentation of people seeing this light on the Pinta, meaning they saw light and it couldn't have been from their ship if they saw it in the distance.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them was, I think, is like the brother or son of the captain of the Pinta, has like documentations talking about witnessing the land.
Also referring the same thing, kind of thing. Yeah.
Another suggestion has been that maybe it was natives with torches fishing out at sea, and they were much closer.
Ooh.
This has been discounted mostly because experts consider midnight fishing 30 miles away from shore to be impractical and dangerous. And they probably wouldn't be doing it. Especially because the area doesn't actually get easier to fish at night. There's no reason to do it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so probably not then.
Yeah, I mean, it's an idea, but why, right? All right. Another suggestion, I think this is a really fun suggestion because it sounds like something I would have said, is that they're all lying. Word of mouth and rumors would have... Well, I'm just saying, like...
You mean to get the land thing?
Exactly. So just imagine one guy says they see a light and they're like, oh man, I think you might have seen land. Or someone says, I think I saw land. Everyone's like, well, I saw the land too. Oh, I saw the light. But no one turned towards it. Meaning nothing was specifically said, but everyone is now, because they made landfall the next day, when the documentation of this voyage was coming out and they wanted to get money and recognition, everyone's like, oh yeah, we all saw this light. We saw this light and it was weird, and that's why we didn't go, because we weren't sure if it was land because it was kind of weird. But then
because
there was land.
They were all kind of lying, and they're like, but we should probably not go. No. Because they're just wanting the credit, not so much real credibility.
Exactly. Well, I'd say that the fact that they didn't change course really lends this theory credit.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It probably was lying, but I don't know, but the two ships saying that they saw it, that's kind of
Two different ships.
Two different ships.
Exactly.
At the same time, theoretically, unless they later went back and put in that information to
They are all chummy. You know,
claim...
when they made landfall, they were all probably hanging around, so they all told each other, "Oh, he saw the light. Oh, I did too, on a different ship."
And then just like...
we were closer, it was me.
in small writing, put in between other facts. Who knows?
And let's be honest, I'm a victim of this. Sometimes if you tell a lie long enough, you forget it's a lie and you believe it.
Yeah, I guess so.
And just to put credit to this, even if it was true or if it was a lie that was believed to be true, one of those crewmates who claimed to have seen the light first, he said, "I saw the light, you should tell Columbus." And they went and told Columbus, and Columbus's reply was allegedly, "Oh yeah, I already saw the light. It wasn't you who saw it first," which totally goes in line with everything I've heard about Columbus from actual historians as opposed to people who paint this pretty picture of a wonderful adventure. I'm like, yes, he was a jerk and he wanted his fame.
He's the first one-upper kind of guy.
Oh, I already saw. I just didn't say anything.
I actually saw a bigger light earlier, but I didn't say anything.
It was cooler. But anyway, this crew member was so upset about this because his claim was considered to have no merit over seeing land first. Out of anger, once he returned to Spain, he left Spain, went to Africa, traveled there. He went to live in Africa, and he renounced his faith in Catholicism.
Damn.
He was pissed. So either he saw a light and no one believed him, or he really believed his own lie. So either way, you don't do that unless you're passionate about something.
I mean, it's so weird to me still to understand that because he didn't receive credit and money, he renounced the religion. I'm like, wait a minute. They should be two different things.
But this was the time of faith.
But at the time, it was the way of life.
Yeah.
No, totally. But it's weird.
So there was this movie that came out in the early 90s called 1492, which was on the...
I think you tried making me watch it one time.
Yeah, it's called 1492, Conquest of Paradise. It's a Ridley Scott film. Some guy who did Blade Runner and
Yeah, it
Alien.
looks super boring.
Well, it's long, and it's very... He tried to make it historically accurate, but the problem is it wasn't super historically accurate. But it came out on the 500-year anniversary, and so there's... It's hard for me to remember the differences between what I learned in that movie as a kid and what I learned in college, and I realized, okay, these two things are true, these two things don't agree, and everything, so I kind of mess things up. But anyway, the whole reason I was bringing this up is one of the most powerful things that happened in the beginning of the movie was when he was trying to persuade the crown to give him money to sail for Spain. He's going through the streets, and the people are bringing up women and burning them on pyres in the middle of the streets. And it was just this whole moment about how faith and religion was so impactful in people's life at the time. I mean, when you find a country, when you find
I'm sorry, I think you lost me at burning women at posts. Were they witches or
I think they were people who
sacrificing themselves? What was happening here?
I think they were victims of the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, I see.
I'm trying to remember. It's been years since I've seen that movie, and I kind of need to rewatch it. But, I mean, can you imagine, if you're a faith-led nation at the time, and you go sailing, and all of a sudden you find this whole massive land with people who've never been contacted in, recorded history at this point. Mm-hmm. None of that stuff was in the Bible. And so they're really confused about what's happening. And
I think at that point, it just went off course.
Yeah, there was a lot of conflict at that time.
Definitely. I think, yeah. I don't even know.
But on that note, let's get to the controversial explanations.
Uh-oh.
The writer of the paper poses their explanation for the event as being the real answer, and it's unlike any other. And I have a feeling some people are going to roll their eyes, but it's interesting. He suggests that they saw marine bioluminescence.
Ooh.
So it kind of sounds
like a jellyfish flying in the air? What are you saying here?
Well, let me divulge for you. They remarked that when sailing in the tropics, displays of bioluminescence is not uncommon. It would have also been something the sailors hadn't seen before, and they'd only been in those waters for such a short period of time, they wouldn't have had time to get to acquainted with the phenomenon or even know what they were seeing. According to the writer, quote, there are many varieties of marine organisms which give off light. Two which give off light near the surface are the Bahamian fireworm, I'm going to butcher these scientific names, Odontocylus, and blooms of tiny organisms called dinoflagellates. Of these, Noctiluca or Suritium become visible.
Chase, I need you to really pronounce these, otherwise I won't know what you're talking about.
Right? Become visible as a glow when disturbed by a ship's bow, a swimmer, or a wave breaking against a reef on a shore.
Yeah, I've seen those.
In some varieties of, oh my god, another one, Gonyalek's emission of light has been noted to follow a circadian rhythm, with the greatest quantity occurring just after midnight.
And that would make sense. One, the time frame fits, and then waves going up and down, they probably were misunderstanding its
ascension and descension.
Right.
Yeah. And these events, end quote, by the way. After the
Wait,
midnight.
not the other side.
But these events are also at a high point during certain months, of which October is one of them.
Ooh.
So October at midnight seems like a really good time to see these. And this guy was talking about active experience in the areas. This happens a lot. And so it's not like just a random glowing green ball gas light that someone sees in the mountains when they see a UFO and like, that's what it was. This is apparently common.
Sure. It's all the time.
So it gets interesting. And so like you said, the waves, the introduction of massive ships into the environment, which would have been disturbing it in a way that hadn't been done before.
Sure.
And the light-enhancing salt spray mentioned by Wolper in her studies all would suggest that everything could be explained about these mysterious lights with this. It's weird that this explanation does cover a lot of the bases. In fact, I'd say all of the bases.
Most of them. The only thing, well, who knows? The ball, though, saying that it was like a ball.
Well, but see, so I guess I didn't say that earlier. Most of the people described it as looking like a big candlelight.
Oh.
So
maybe
I think that means it moves and is weird and whatnot.
Like flickering, and that would actually... Okay,
I think at that time, they wouldn't know what a ball of light looks like except for the sun. Like, their reference in 1492 for light is candles and fires.
So it might have been just the best way they could have described it.
Exactly. So we don't actually know specifically what they saw, because how would they've seen the sun, the moon, and fire.
Yeah, it looked like a giant orb.
So... we can accept that. The guy actually made a good case for it, and I'm like, okay, you know what? It's probably the most reasonable solution, but it's not the only explanations. We have to get into the funniest one, which is that it was a UFO.
That was my initial gut reaction.
So I have to step outside tropical terror for a second, because UFOs don't belong in tropical terror, but I have to talk about it.
Sure.
The fact that the light was both flashing, intermittent, and seemed to ascend are all telltale signs of UFO. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, nothing else is UFO. Like, it wasn't moving through the sky or anything.
But it disappeared?
It did disappear, but it wasn't, like, moving quickly. It wasn't moving erratically and doing things. Like, they said it was ascending and descending, but they weren't saying, like, it jumped to the right and then the left and up. Like, all the UFO sightings we see now do really weird things. And this one, it does seem weird specifically in their time frame, but for the most part, they just kind of up and down.
Maybe they just
flickering.
got a really lazy UFO that day.
Just a really crappy UFO.
Yeah. And besides, if you really think about it, the whole bioluminescent thing didn't fit as well, because let me tell you, it wasn't as constant. And you said that it was always with the breaks of waves and all these things. It wouldn't have just been for a moment. They would have consistently been saying, hey, look at that. It's all around us. It wouldn't have been in one specific direction, right?
Well, but they said a lot of it could be broken up by water getting the bow of the ship moving in through the water. So it might have actually been directed kind of in a specific direction. If it was being caused by the breaks in the water by the boats. Is what he was suggesting. It was kind of disrupting the area and everything like that. Which, in the still water, you wouldn't have seen it, but all of a sudden the boats are getting close to land. They're disturbing the water. The water's also going to crash against the shore. It kind of creating a perfect environment.
Okay, I guess that...
And by the perfect environment, I mean, so they saw a flickering intermediate light for a very short while and it went away. I mean, a small thing. that everyone wanted to claim they saw because they wanted money for seeing land.
Oh, right. Okay. Fine. Fair enough.
I don't want to believe the UFO because it doesn't have any of the other UFO stuff. But I am going to say, because sometimes I like talking about this, if we get into the sci-fi movie mindset...
Oh, Lord.
Wouldn't it be a cool story that future historians with time travel would travel back in time to witness important human events, such as the landing of Columbus in the New World? What if we saw the fleeting evidence of future documentarians in their ship just wanting to witness Columbus landing in the New World?
Of all things.
Isn't that just interesting?
I mean, I guess so.
Time machines you can do, you can go anywhere. I'm pretty sure they're going to get everything.
Yeah, I guess so. That is a little sphere, the movie and / book, for me. But yeah, possibly. Future us. Why not? I'm
not saying those are happening. I'm just saying it's a cool sci-fi movie idea right there. But anyway.
Yep.
So that's pretty much what we have here. But there is a reason I brought up this story. I didn't just say, ooh, Columbus, I can't wait to talk about him or something like that. It was nothing like that.
Good old Chris.
I discovered this while researching something else, something bigger that is going to be a much larger story that I'm going to give to you guys next week. It's going to be my big story, my big tropical terrors. And this served as a segue because, you see, this event is considered by many to be the first documented supernatural occurrence in the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh my God.
So if you're like me, just hearing the name Bermuda Triangle brings about chills and childhood fascination. So next episode, with this as the lead-in, I'm going all in on Bermuda Triangle stories.
I'm so excited.
Which is like the biggest tropical terror I could do.
You know, my story, a lot of people consider it the Mexican Bermuda Triangle. I did read that somewhere.
The dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I did read that somewhere, and I'm like, so the triangle is like in the same location. Like, it's just, you know, have you ever, well, of course you've seen it in Idle Hands, where she like starts documenting specific areas that these weird like demonic possessions are occurring.
Yeah.
And she like draws like
she just sees a bunch of dots and she makes a pentagram out of it.
But it doesn't
make sense. It doesn't fit.
It doesn't like touch all the dots.
And she's like, holy shit.
And she's like, coincidence, and there's all these other dots on the side that she's ignoring. Anyway, I don't know why that made me think of that. Probably because Mexico is like, me too, it's a triangle if we really try hard enough. Who knows?
They should call it the Chihuahua Triangle.
Well, actually...
because it's partially in Chihuahua.
It's partially in 3 states, but like overlapping, not necessarily triangle-y.
Well, is there anything that's like Mexican and triangular?
What do you mean?
Apart from a tortilla chip?
Like... the tortilla chip phenomenon. That is our episode name.
Tortilla chip. The silent tortilla chip regions.
The nacho.
I think we can do better.
Anomalies.
Than that.
I don't know. We'll think of something.
But anyway, that's my story. I hope you liked it. Thought it was interesting that we have 500-year-old documentations of people seeing a strange light that should have been land, but it wasn't good enough for them to do it. And modern scientists are like, yeah, that's weird. That doesn't actually match up with anything about your nautical placement, your speed, where you were. Like, it just doesn't match right.
But props to like people trying to figure it out. It's like they're so obsessed. I mean, think of what resources they had to go through. You know, they had to get a boat. They had to like get some guys to go on this island, set multiple fires.
I'm assuming guys already lived on the island. I'm betting she just said, hey, you live here, can you light a fire?
Here's $50.
Yeah, people live there. I mean, it's an inhabited island.
I know. I don't know. Like, it's a lot of effort. Maybe it's just like a fun experiment. Who knows?
I do think it'd be cool to go to that island, though.
Yeah.
Because I've read a lot of the arguments as to why it's probably the island, and I believe it. I think it'd be pretty neat to go there just to see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. The no nacho zone.
Oh, now that's depressing.
Oh, that's true. It makes it sound like no nachos exist.
And they exist. You just can't get to them because the aliens are keeping you away from it.
Aww.
See, that's even sadder.
Okay. No nacho zone is
it's out.
Vetoed. Okay.
So we got to end the episode now because you're just going to keep giving ideas for what you want it to be called for the rest of time.
I'm not going to stop. Okay.
So anyway, I think that brings us to a close this week. Thank you guys for listening. If you have any stories that you think people should know, we want to hear from you. Please drop us a line at hotwpodcast@gmail.com or through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media things that you may or may not use. As always, we post episodes every Saturday, and you can find us on all the standard podcast platforms. We want to thank you all for joining us today. Once again, if like us, you are imbibing away, cheers and have another. I know we will. Well, I'll do my root beer because of my medicine. Mm-hmm. If you are listening to us on your way to work or while being a productive member of society, good on ya, and I hope your day is awesome. But if you had me hungover while listening to this, like on a Sunday after you imbibed a little hard the night before, don't worry, because the best cure for a hangover
is fear.
Bye.